Last weekend saw the launch of a new radio and television network in Australia. The Islamic Broadcasting Corporation aims to attract 250,000 subscribers. Its driving force is a charismatic preacher who's capturing the hearts and minds of young Australian Muslims with a radical mix of pleas to understand terrorism, anti-Western conspiracy theories and homophobia. Sheikh Khalid Yasin is an American convert to Islam who's already made several visits to Australia and is pushing the country's tolerance to its limits with his extremist message. Sunday's Sarah Ferguson has been investigating this new voice of Islam.
And how can you put a sacred trust in the hands of a non-Muslim? There's no such thing as a Muslim having a non-Muslim friend. If you prefer the clothing of the Kafirs other than the clothing of the Muslims, most of those names that's on most of those clothing is faggots, homosexuals, and lesbians.
The idea that you would come here and promulgate views which not only will demean and denigrate certain individuals and sections of Australian society, but in the end, ultimately, I think incite possibly violence and divisions in this country, there should be no place for that.
Some people characterize me as a radical cleric. I don't think I'm any more radical than Mahatma Gandhi or John Pilger or Jesus Christ or anybody else who's trying to preach a moral word.
Sheikh Yasin is about to test Australian tolerance to its limits. He wants to be a leader in Australia's Islamic community as an Islamic media mogul. And he's been raising money here for his own radio and TV stations.
Good evening, Australia. This is your host of Purpose of Life Radio, Khalid Yasin.
Starting with radio broadcasts, Yasin has big plans for what he calls the Purpose of Life Islamic TV channel.
Purpose of Life Radio is the moral-minded media. Please keep that in mind. Wherever Discovery Channel is at, Purpose of Life channel will be. We believe that Purpose of Life as a channel and as a theme will become just as generic and just as common and attractive as the Discovery Channel.
But it seems Sheikh Yasin wasn't really counting on Discovery. For Sunday has discovered many of the claims he makes to support his project, and indeed much of his CV, are false. The issue is he's claimed to have those qualifications. I've checked, he doesn't. Does that concern you?
Well, I guess it would. I guess it would concern me. There'd be, I would really need to understand why he would make those claims if they weren't true.
You forget your Islamic identity. Now you have become compromised through some kind of intellectuality.
Yasin's misfortune was trying to launch his empire here when the debate on Australian values versus Islamic fundamentalism was at its most intense and emotional, especially since last week's bombing in Bali.
A non-Muslim associate doesn't understand, doesn't embrace your values.
For years, Sheikh Yasin had gone unnoticed by the government, visiting the country to give lectures, even teaching at a Sydney school.
There's not enough talk about brotherhood. There's not enough exercising of brotherhood. You go to mosque, but you don't feel brotherhood. You see Muslims in the street, but you don't see brotherhood.
The Muslim youth have copped an absolute battering in the media since 1998, which has, and I've seen it firsthand, which has affected their self-esteem and their confidence. Khalid Yasin installs a lot of pride in the youth and reminds them that as Muslims you've got a lot to be proud of.
Adam Huda is a Sydney lawyer and until recently a director of Yasin's company.
As far as the young kids are concerned, he's like a superstar. They find him very appealing. He's Afro-American. They find him a little bit hip for a so-called sheikh.
And it's precisely the young that Yasin likes to target with his message. He knows how to push their buttons.
When they talk about fanatic, extremists, whatever, they're really talking about young male Muslims. How do you feel about that? Does it make you feel angry, disappointed, or what do you think?
Well, basically, people look at Muslims these days and, with like the wrong scope. They look at us as being like criminals and people who want to see destruction and things like that.
How do you feel about the fact that the government is saying that we should set up some new rules to make sure that no potential terrorists are developed or cultivated? And also, we want to see inside the mosque and places so before things happen, we can see what happens. How do you feel about that? Because that's what's being talked about. Now, if they didn't say exactly that, I'm telling you, that's what it means.
It's an absolute joke how far this has gone, about everyone being prejudiced about Muslims. You know, if anything was going to happen, like a terrorist activity or anything, it will be basically because of the pressure being put on Muslims by non-Muslims, causing dramatic pain, you know what I mean?
I think we've got to be extremely concerned when he can come to our country, target particularly young Muslim men.
Federal Education Minister Brendan Nelson wants to bring in a system of accreditation for Islamic preachers.
And I think perhaps there can be an argument for perhaps taking a more strident position in relation to visas that are offered to people who come to our country.
Before he got into broadcasting, Yasin distributed DVDs of his lectures, like this one. The constant message is that Muslims are victimized everywhere.
Allegedly, Muslims who are in Kashmir or Afghanistan or Palestine or Somalia or Kashmir or Afghanistan or Iraq or Somalia or Palestine or Bali or in Indonesia or any place where Muslims have been displaced.
And while he doesn't condone suicide bombing, he says it's understandable.
Now you think about a woman that's 18 years old and beautiful, who has lost her children, lost her father, lost her brothers, lost her mind, and she thinks that the only thing that she can do to send a signal back to the people who are the criminals of this is to do an act of reprisal, is to strap on her 60 pounds of explosives and walk out onto a bus or a cafe or a hospital or wherever where there are other innocent people and blow herself up as an example. That's frustration. But is it justified? Islamically, it is not. But can it be understood in the context of perpetuated, protracted oppression that brought about a sense of madness? Yes.
According to Yasin, suicide bombing is un-Islamic. He says he doesn't approve of it, but he does understand it. Now, do you have some sympathy with that view?
Well, I'm most certainly not. Firstly, suicide is in itself something that we struggle to understand and do everything we can to try to prevent. But to take your own life in trying to kill an indeterminate number of innocent people is perhaps one of the most heinous of crimes that could be committed.
So who is Khalid Yasin and why is he here? He was born a Christian into a family of 10 children in Harlem.
I come from the ghettos. I come from probably the Vietnam of New York. So coming out of that jungle and being gifted by the Creator to be Muslim, I think my responsibility is to share what's inside of me with other people. I don't care what color they are anymore. It's not a, used to be, back in the 60s, it was a white-black thing. It's not a white-black thing anymore.
Free at last! Free at last! Thank God Almighty! We are free at last!
It was then, growing up in the height of the civil rights era. Aged 18, he became a Muslim after hearing a lecture by Malcolm X.
Yes, I started to understand class, and I started reading things, and I started developing inside of myself a distaste for issues of exploitation and oppression, Nicaragua and Panama and Honduras and South Africa and apartheid, and start to understand what those words meant.
Yasin wants us to see him as an ordinary man. He invited us into his home to make breakfast. But even early in the morning, he can't stop himself.
Osama bin Laden is not a everywhere, omnipotent, you know, I mean, like he's like in the east, he's in the west, he's in the sky, he's everywhere, whereas Osama bin Laden, I mean, that would warrant $68 billion in 17 countries hunting him, and everyone in their houses being afraid of this kind of Osama bin Laden, boogeyman, so forth, whatever. This is a creation. They have created this here in the minds of the people in order to justify a war they call on terror, but is really a terror they have put inside the people. It is a war against Islam.
And he's waded right into one of the most divisive issues between the Muslim community and the federal government, September the 11th.
There's been no evidence that has surfaced, no bona fide, irrevocable, irrefutable evidence that had been surfaced to show that there was a group called Al-Qaeda that did the September 11 bombings. I'm of the opinion that there was a rogue operation that took place. Now, to go beyond that would say I would have to have some evidence, which I don't.
But he does go beyond it.
An operation that took place with the complicity of some very sophisticated entities other than some Middle Eastern guys on an airplane or being orchestrated by somebody from a cave in Iraq.
And what do you mean by sophisticated entities?
Well, sophisticated entities means that entities who themselves were governmentally instructed, equipped, motivated. We now know that the way that the World Trade Center fell, the way that those buildings fell, they fell from internal explosive charges, the same way it's done in a construction site.
Well, it's possible that he needs professional assistance. If I draw on my medical background, perhaps a psychiatrist may be able to help him. I mean, how anybody could possibly hold that kind of view, let alone promote it to others, particularly people who themselves have low levels of education, who live impoverished lives, and he knows that those kinds of views can at times fall into fertile ground.
To be honest, it has not been yet on the records, and you know media better than me, heaps better than me. It has not been proved up till today's date, particularly, yes, this was the person behind it.
Yasin is clearly getting his message across to some young Muslims. Waqas Dahik and Farouk Khan are enthralled by him. They work for him full-time without a salary.
I haven't met anyone like him. He's powerful, his motivation is just astonishing, and he guides people towards bettering themselves.
I personally take him as my mentor or as my teacher in both religious affairs to some extent, as well as you know, in civilized life.
Conspiracy theories are Yasin's bread and butter, and the wilder, the better.
An AIDS virus that is a classic disease that was created in Fort McKinley, United States. Fort McKinley, the AIDS virus, 63,000 gallons.
This one comes from his DVD called Jihad or Terrorism.
Missionaries from the World Health Organization and Christian groups went into Africa and inoculated people for diphtheria, malaria, yellow fever, and they put in the medicine the AIDS virus.
But you said that in Purpose of Life television, at the end of each program, you're going to have a moral statement. So in a sense, Purpose of Life, let's be clear, Purpose of Life will endorse that theory of AIDS.
No, we won't necessarily, because we can't endorse that theory, because that theory is not necessarily fact. But our job is to bring another view.
And what do you believe? Do you believe that AIDS was devised by the US government to limit population growth?
I don't say by the US government. I say that there were at least 5 governments that acted in complicity.
Firstly, I have a personal view about this. My own brother died from AIDS, so I'm quite revulsed by the things that he has said. The second is that We respect freedom of speech until it diminishes and demeans or vilifies any one individual or any section of Australian society.
What I would like to do is to offer something that we call moral-minded media. And that is, what we're trying to do is to not to make condemnations, not to make judgments, but to put a statement in the middle that we consider to be neutral.
But Yasin's version of neutral is deeply alarming to some sections of the community.
The Quran gives a very clear position regarding homosexuality, lesbianism, and bestiality, that these are aberrations. They are immoralities. And if they are tried, convicted, they are punishable by death.
But on the streets of Lakemba, in Sydney's Islamic heartland, the visiting preacher is a welcome face.
Why the owner of that restaurant invite you to come there for a meal?
After we finish, okay. We will come.
Warung Ita.
Okay.
The restaurant Warung Ita.
Okay.
The Halal Padang restaurant.
Okay, sister, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, all right, thank you. Okay.
His constant theme is that Muslims here are being victimized. He takes me to visit the Howden Street Islamic bookstore, exposed in the media after the London bombings, for stocking how-to books on suicide bombing. They don't want us to come in.
Do they think they've been unfairly targeted?
Well, of course they do, and I think that that goes without question. They have been, by elected officials and by the media industry in general.
In what way?
Well, I mean, you know, nobody's calling Christian terrorists.
In the cafe across the road, Yasin explains.
I say then, every Christian shop, every Jewish shop, every Hindu shop that may have an objectionable material towards Muslims, who is slandering the Prophet ﷺ, who is slandering Islam or classifying them as dogs or pigs or criminals or whatever, should also be done the same. And if it is not, then that is prejudicial treatment.
But the reason that that particular bookshop was targeted in the first place was that they were carrying material that talked about, for example, how to construct a suicide belt for a suicide bomber.
Mm-hmm. I think that whole idea of suicide is rubbish. There are no books that you're going to find in no Muslim bookstore that says how to become a suicide bomber. This witch hunt against Muslims is what we're against. I have not been able to find one single incident.
And Yasin repeats the message frequently that there has never been any threat from Muslims in Australia.
There's even no real justification for it. I've asked people. I've asked young people. I've asked Muslims. I've asked non-Muslims. I've asked older people. Has there been an event in the history of this country involving a Muslim that would suggest? They said no.
The answer, of course, is yes. That just over a year and a half ago, a man came from France with the intention of committing a terrorist act in Australia and began to draw about him people who were sympathetic to that cause.
Okay, but there was not a terrorist incident that took place in this country.
Because they were caught.
Well, okay, but there was not a terrorist incident.
Convinced it's the mainstream media that's spreading misconceptions about Islam, Yasin and his followers are putting their faith in a new company, the Islamic Broadcasting Corporation.
Absolutely critical, because up until now, the Muslims are crying out for a platform that we can respond to allegations, that we can rebut allegations that are directed in our way, and we don't have that.
The first broadcasts are on satellite radio and the web, where there are no licensing requirements nor control of content. But Yasin's Australian partner told us they're planning to purchase an FM licence.
It's not my responsibility to control radio stations nor license them, but I would be, certainly if I was asked my opinion, as someone who holds such views, having a radio licence in Australia would be of great concern to me.
The launch in Australia is Yasin's third attempt to get a broadcast network up and running. The first try in the United States failed because of September the 11th.
Well, I arrived in Saudi Arabia September the 10th. I was in my hotel room. and I turned on CNN, and I witnessed the horrific events that took place 2.5 miles from where I was born, in a city that I consider to be home. And so if anyone, the shock probably hit me more than it hit anyone else.
Yasin was in Saudi Arabia to organize funding from the Saudi charity Al Haramain.
While in Saudi Arabia, I had some discussions with officials at Haramain who had the interest in establishing a television station. If there was any place to establish a television station in the world, it would have been America.
The US government forced Al Haramain to shut down for supporting Al-Qaeda and its offshoots, including the Indonesian terrorist group Jemaah Islamiyah.
6 months after the World Trade Center situation took place, the Haramain Foundation was blacklisted and considered to have some connections to some terrorist-based whatever. I wouldn't know that. I didn't see any traces of that. But once that determination was made, I'm an American, first of all, and I have to put my own subjectivity to the side.
Yasin moved to the UK. He made his headquarters here in the northern city of Sheffield and began looking for new investors. Armed with this glossy brochure on the UK operation, Yasin came back to Australia last year.
Islamic Broadcasting Corporation, a unique investment opportunity. It will host up to 50 multimedia TV channels and 5 radio stations, potentially serving 1.2 billion viewers across the globe.
The brochure's biggest selling point is a TV broadcast centre in Coventry, complete with photos and architects' drawings.
We are currently relocating to our brand new, purpose-built 8,000 square feet broadcast centre. It will be opened for business in September 2005.
By the time we'd discovered the brochure, Yasin had left the country on an overseas trip. We put its claims to the new managing director of IBC Australia, Walid Ali. IBC in the UK claims it's building a £2 million broadcast centre, and that broadcast centre is under construction now. In fact, it's supposed to be ready now. Have you seen it?
I'll be very honest with you, I don't know a great deal about their operations, but I do know that facility has not been built as yet. Obviously, with any organisation, any business venture that you take on, there can be unexpected delays, and I'm sure they're having, some unexpected delays.
The idea of a Muslim-owned TV station was very attractive to Muslims here, and the brochure was crucial. Yasin used it to convince them that the UK operation was worth investing in. We've spoken to people who attended fundraisers in Sydney run by Yasin. At one event last year, $90,000 was pledged in a single evening. We've also seen bank documents transferring $50,000 of that money to a bank account in the UK in the name of one of Yasin's companies. The question is, what happened to that money? This is the real technology park in Coventry, and there is no broadcast centre, because the brochure is a work of fiction, indeed fraud. Yasin's only connection with the Coventry Technology Park was a small office space rented out by his UK associate, Channel Islam. According to the company which leases space here, Channel Islam broke its lease last year and is being pursued by debt collectors. None of these groups is collaborating with Yasin. The sums don't add up, and the drawings were lifted from someone else's brochure.
I don't think now, after this long time of promises, the channel is going to start broadcasting tomorrow, after tomorrow, next week, next month, next year. I don't think there is much credibility left for such promises.
Muhammad Ali runs this genuine media operation in the UK called Islam Channel. Not to be confused with Yasin's partners at Channel Islam, who left bad debts in Coventry. He has this to say about Yasin's Broadcasting Corporation.
Islamic Broadcasting Corporation is, to me, it doesn't exist. It's not there. I've never came across it. The first time I've heard of it is from your good self. This one, it doesn't exist.
Ali says that Yasin has been raising money in the UK as well.
I remember once they have a launch party in Regent's Park Mosque. They invited people and told them that they are launching. It's the day zero, as they call it is. And that it was 3 years ago, and nothing came through.
He's a person of great honour, and he takes his position as a representative of Islam very seriously, and he says time and time and again that all his books and all his operations are completely open for anybody that wants to go through those papers.
But the non-existent broadcast centre is not the only discrepancy in this operation. This is Yasin's home in the UK, the Purpose of Life Centre in Sheffield.
At the Purpose of Life Centre in Sheffield, for right now, that's sort of like the hub for the work that we're doing, because the Purpose of Life Centre is an institution. It's not just an office.
According to the brochure, it's an offshoot of the Islamic Teaching Institute in the US.
The Islamic Teaching Institute, Georgia, USA. It has been responsible for more than 11,000 persons accepting Islam worldwide, and more than 3,000 since the unfortunate September 11th incident.
IBC says that it's originally an offshoot of the Islamic Teaching Institute in Atlanta. What do you know about the Islamic Teaching Institute that Khalid was associated with?
I know nothing about it.
Well, we've tried to find it. We've made various inquiries in the States, but we can't find any reference to it or anyone who knows about it.
Well, I think you'll have to ask Sheikh Khalid in relation to that. Sheikh Khalid is well known and respected around the world for the work he does in propagating the message of Islam, essentially in contact with non-Muslims. And I think his work, more than anything, probably is where his accreditation lies.
Where Yasin's accreditation lies is another mystery. He prepared this CV to support an application to the Immigration Department.
Schenectady Community College, graduated 1986. State University of New York, graduated 1991.
Neither institution has any record of a Khalid Yasin graduating. While he was still in Australia, we asked Yasin about his qualifications as a preacher.
I say to you that whatever qualifications I have, they are subjective. And I don't even care. And if there was a choice for Khalid Yasin, I would take any qualification, academic qualification I have, and I throw it out the window, and I tell you that whatever qualifications, other qualifications I have, whatever convictions I have, will stand on their own.
The issue is he's claimed to have those qualifications. I've checked, he doesn't. Does that concern you?
Well, I guess it would. I guess it would concern me. There'd be, I would really need to understand why he would make those claims if they weren't true.
Sunday sent Yasin a series of questions about these discrepancies, but we haven't received a reply. No doubt his rhetoric of Muslim victimhood will apply equally to him.
If I were a Buddhist, if I were a Hindu, if I were a Christian, if I were a born-again evangelist, would that frighten anybody? No, it wouldn't. But it frightens people because I'm a Muslim. I say that that is because of the atmosphere of prejudice that has been fostered by sensationalists, hungry, desperate, prejudicial, scandalous journalists who can't seem to find any other story. Shame on them.
And Muhammad Ali in London has this message for Muslims in Australia thinking of donating money to Yasin.
My advice, think before you donate. You have to make sure that you are donating not only to a good cause, because everybody knows what does it mean a good cause, but you have to know that you are giving it to the right people.
No doubt the Australian government will be asking the question, what exactly is the purpose of life?
Sheikh Khalid Yasin. Sarah Ferguson with that report, the producer Nick Rushworth, the researcher Annalie Taylor.